In example 2, we are going to be adding 3 fractions to make one big fraction. As I've got 3 fractions, I need to look at each of their denominators in turn. The first denominator is a nice linear bracket factor, as is the second denominator. In the third denominator, you'll notice that I wrote the x term second and not first. And so before I even find my LCD, I actually want to switch those terms around so that the highest order of x comes in the first position. In other words, I'm going to have 4 all over x plus 1 unchanged, plus 2 all over x minus 1 all unchanged. But if I take out a minus from the bracket in the denominator of the third term, my minus x becomes a plus x, and my plus 1 becomes a minus 1 in the bracket. Also, a minus times a minus gives me a plus, so that third term changes from a minus to a plus. Now if I write this down so that it's neat, I'm going to have 4 all over x plus 1 plus 2 all over x minus 1 plus 1 over x minus 1. Now by completing this exercise, you can see that the second and the third denominators are in fact identical to each other. So when I choose my LCD, noting that I need the highest number of each type of factor, I'm only going to choose the bracket x plus 1 and the bracket x minus 1. Remember, I told you that the LCD gives you 2 parts of your sum. The first part that it gives you is going to be your common denominator. So you take your LCD and you write it down as the denominator of your single common fraction. The second thing that the LCD does is it gives you your restrictions. So writing down the restrictions for this sum so that I note where I might have had a 0 denominator, I cannot have a 0 when x plus 1 is equal to 0. In other words, when x is equal to minus 1, and I cannot have a 0 when x minus 1 is equal to 0. In other words, when x is equal to 1. Now going back to my sum, I'm now able to adjust all my numerators by the new factors that were given to their denominators. The first numerator was 4. The new factor in its denominator is x minus 1. So I times 4 by x minus 1. Write down your next term's sign. The next term in the numerator was 2, and the new factor in the denominator is x plus 1. I'm doing the same in the last term. The old numerator was 1, and that needs to be times by x plus 1. All that remains now is for me to simplify my numerator by multiplying the coefficients into each of their brackets in turn. Remember, when you multiply into a bracket, the coefficient must be multiplied into both of the terms inside the bracket. Doing this, I get 4x minus 4 plus 2x plus 2 plus x plus 1, and that is still all over my denominator of x plus 1, x minus 1. And then finally, by adding the like terms, I add 4x plus 2x plus x, which is 7x. I do the same with my constant terms, and minus 4 plus 2 plus 1 is going to give me minus 1. I now have those 3 fractions added together to make one big fraction.